Gentlemen, today I want to reveal something powerful, something that most men overlook in the emotional chess game of attraction. It's not about manipulation, it's about presence, psychology, and value. If you want to make a woman worry about you, not out of fear, but because your absence means something, you need to understand mastering the power of silence is one of the most potent psychological tools a man can use when it comes to creating emotional impact. Most men are conditioned to believe that communication is key in relationships, and while that's partially true, excessive communication often dilutes your value. The moment a woman knows she has complete access to you, that your emotional and verbal response is guaranteed no matter the situation, she subconsciously devalues your presence. She may not say it outright, but internally she stops fearing your loss. But when you choose silence deliberately, not out of pettiness, but out of principle, it shifts the entire dynamic. It shows that you're emotionally disciplined, that you don't speak unless it's necessary, that your attention and words are not to be taken for granted. This silence hits differently when it follows a moment of disrespect or indifference from her side. Instead of reacting with anger or pleading, you respond with withdrawal. You let your absence speak volumes. This isn't about punishing her, it's about protecting your peace and enforcing invisible boundaries. And nothing unsettles a woman more than realizing the man who once pursued her, listened to her, and responded to her, has now gone quiet. She begins to wonder, did I push him away? Is he losing interest? Is he talking to someone else? Her mind becomes the battlefield, and the longer you remain silent, the louder her thoughts become. But this kind of silence must be intentional. You don't just disappear out of insecurity or passive aggression. You disappear with strength, with confidence, with the understanding that your attention is a gift, not an obligation. While you're silent, you're not just absent. You're upgrading yourself, improving, recalibrating, and becoming more powerful emotionally, mentally, even physically. That energy of focus radiates when you return, and she feels it, she sees it, and that's when she realizes she misjudged your worth. Silence is not weakness, it's presence turned inward, and in a world where everyone's screaming for attention, your quiet detachment becomes magnetic. When she reaches out and gets no answer, she doesn't just feel rejection, she feels the weight of your detachment. And that detachment is far more impactful than any argument or explanation could ever be. Because you're not trying to prove anything, you're simply living in your standard. You're not reacting. You're responding to a shift in energy by removing yours. And suddenly, the balance of power shifts. She's no longer the one being pursued. She's the one left wondering. The worry starts to settle in, not because you caused it with words, but because your silence forced her to confront the emotional consequences of her actions. That's the true art of masculine silence. Staying mysterious and not oversharing is one of the most underrated traits of emotionally intelligent and powerful men. In a world where everyone is broadcasting every detail of their lives, being a man who holds back becomes rare, and because it's rare, it's valuable. Women are incredibly intuitive. They're constantly observing, analyzing, and interpreting the behavior of the man they're interested in. So when a man doesn't spill every detail about his past, his thoughts, his schedule, or his feelings, she's forced to do what the human brain is wired to do: fill in the blanks. And the moment her mind starts working overtime to figure you out, she becomes mentally invested. That mental investment is the first step toward emotional worry. Oversharing is often mistaken for intimacy, But true intimacy is earned slowly, through shared experiences, trust, and consistency, not through rapid emotional dumping. When a man talks too much about his past, constantly explains himself, or over-justifies his thoughts and choices, he unintentionally reveals that he needs validation. And the moment a woman senses that you seek her emotional approval, she begins to lose that unconscious respect that fuels attraction. A mysterious man, on the other hand, operates on the opposite frequency. He says less, but means more. His silence isn't emptiness, it's intentional space. His words are calculated. His stories are shared sparingly. He doesn't feel the need to impress, and that confidence is deeply intriguing. The mysterious man doesn't immediately respond with a full explanation when she asks where he's been. He may smile, nod, give a brief answer, but he never feels the need to unload. He lets her wonder, and that wondering becomes a psychological loop. Why won't he open up to me? What's he hiding? Does he not trust me yet? Or is he just like this with everyone? These questions don't make her lose interest. They make her more drawn to figuring you out. She begins to study you like a puzzle, and puzzles are addictive, especially when the stakes feel personal. Another critical layer of mystery is not showing every emotion you feel. When a man is emotionally transparent all the time, when every little insecurity, every shift in mood, every anxiety is exposed, he loses the emotional frame. Women are naturally drawn to strength and emotional steadiness. That doesn't mean you never show vulnerability, but it means you show it selectively, with control, and at the right time. The mysterious man doesn't reveal his every thought or struggle in hopes of being comforted. He handles his issues internally. He gives the impression of emotional depth that hasn't yet been fully explored, and that mystery is magnetic. You also stay mysterious by avoiding predictable patterns. If she knows exactly when you'll text, call, or show up, she'll begin to take it for granted. But when your availability isn't constant, when your life is clearly filled with priorities beyond her, she starts to question her place. Is he busy or ignoring me? Is he thinking about me? That inner dialogue keeps you in her mind far more effectively than constant attention ever could. You don't ignore her, you simply don't center your world around her. And that gap between her desire for certainty and the reality of your emotional discipline becomes the very thing that makes her think about you all the time. When you remain mysterious, you're not being deceptive, you're being strategic. You're giving her the space to pursue understanding you rather than force, feeding her your story. You're letting your life unfold like a great novel, chapter by chapter, with depth, tension, and unpredictability. And when a woman reads that kind of story, she doesn't just get intrigued, she gets emotionally hooked. She begins to worry about what page you're on, what you're thinking, and whether she'll still be a part of your plotline as it unfolds. That's the power of staying mysterious. Prioritizing your purpose over her is not just about chasing money, status, or success. It's about embodying a sense of direction that defines who you are at your core. When a woman observes a man so deeply connected to his mission that nothing, no relationship, no emotion, no distraction, can pull him off track, something powerful happens inside her. She starts to realize that she is not the center of your universe. And ironically, that realization creates emotional tension, curiosity, and eventually worry. Because women are used to being pursued, they're used to being chased, validated, complimented. But when you refuse to orbit around her, and instead remain focused on building something greater than the relationship, she begins to notice the distance between her presence and your priorities. That gap is where her mind begins to spiral with questions. Why isn't he obsessed with me like other guys? What is it that keeps him so focused? Could I actually lose this man to his mission? The modern man is often encouraged to be emotionally available, constantly attentive, endlessly present. But the problem is, when you give a woman more attention than you give to your own goals, you slowly dismantle your value in her eyes. Women are instinctively drawn to men who lead, who conquer, who build. It's an ancient attraction hardwired into biology. So when you break from that by making her your emotional focal point, the polarity disappears. Your edge softens, and eventually she no longer fears losing you because, in her subconscious mind, she already owns you. But when you are consumed by your craft, whether it's business, fitness, art, purpose-driven work, she can feel it. And more importantly, she can feel that your happiness, your momentum, your fulfillment doesn't depend on her validation. That is what breeds tension and desire. Every time you choose your purpose over a date, over an argument, over a needy conversation, you reinforce the message that you are not available for distractions. And the right woman won't be offended by this. She may protest on the surface, act cold or even distant, but underneath that, she's wondering how she can become a part of your world. She begins to want asterisk in asterisk on your vision because you're not offering it easily. And if she's truly feminine at her core, she will be drawn to your masculine direction like gravity. Your time becomes sacred. Your attention becomes a rare reward. And the fact that you're not easily influenced by emotions or romantic tension makes her realize that she can't just emotionally sway you with beauty, mood swings, or affection. This doesn't mean you become emotionally unavailable or cold. It means you maintain an unshakable focus, and she knows that unless she adds to that focus, she risks being excluded from it. That's what creates psychological pressure. She begins to feel competitive, not with other women necessarily, but with your asterisk life asterisk. She wants to be prioritized, but she realizes she has to earn that place, and that's when the worry creeps in, not because you threatened her, not because you manipulated her, but because she can see that you are a man who's going somewhere with or without her. When she senses that you would rather lose her than lose your mission, she will not only respect you, she'll feel an anxiety that pushes her to recalibrate her behavior. Suddenly, being moody, flaky, or disrespectful doesn't feel so safe anymore. She realizes you're not the guy who will beg her to stay. You're the guy who will nod, walk away, and get right back to building your empire. And it's that energy, that sense of grounded direction and emotional sovereignty that makes her worry. Because she knows deep down she's not in control. You are. You're the one writing the story, and if she wants a part in it, she has to deserve it. Leaving her with questions instead of answers is one of the most subtle yet effective ways to establish deep psychological influence. It requires self-control, emotional restraint, and a keen understanding of timing. In most relationships, men fall into the trap of being overly available, not just physically, but emotionally and intellectually. They rush to explain, clarify, and justify everything they do or say, thinking that transparency builds connection. But in reality, over-explaining kills mystery. It removes the emotional tension that keeps a woman engaged. When a woman knows exactly what you're thinking, what your next move will be, how you feel about every little thing, her imagination shuts down. And when her imagination shuts down, so does her emotional investment. But the man who leaves space in the conversation, who answers with confidence yet doesn't fill every gap with unnecessary detail, triggers something far deeper. She begins to think more about you in your absence than she ever did in your presence. She starts replaying moments in her head, reading between the lines, analyzing your tone, your pauses, your body language. This internal dialogue she has with herself is where the real emotional attachment begins. Because when a woman starts trying to decode you, she's no longer just talking to you. She's talking to the version of you she's creating in her own mind. That version is shaped by uncertainty, and uncertainty is the seed of obsession. Think about this. If you end every conversation by stating exactly how you feel, where you stand, and what you expect, there's no room for her to wonder. But if you end the conversation with a smile that says more than your words, with a silence that leaves her hanging just a bit, or with a mysterious comment that she can't quite interpret, you live in her mind rent-free. She starts asking herself questions she doesn't have answers to. Was he being serious or playful? Did he mean something deeper by that? Why didn't he text me good night like he usually does? These aren't random thoughts. They're emotional hooks. And every hook pulls her closer. Even the way you share your goals or past should be laced with just enough vagueness to create curiosity. Don't dump your life story on her in one sitting. Share glimpses, fragments, things that hint at depth, but never give the full picture. Let her be the one to pull more out of you. Let her chase your story, and when she asks, don't lie. But don't give everything either. Be direct, but not detailed. Let your presence be a mystery she wants to solve, not a profile she can fully download. This also applies to your intentions with her. Don't always verbalize where you stand. If she asks where things are going, it's not always wise to give a concrete answer. Instead, say something that keeps her on edge. Something that reflects confidence without giving away control. Let's just see where this goes, or I'm enjoying this, and I'm not in a rush. These statements keep the frame masculine. They show that you're in control of your emotions and that she's not dictating the pace of the relationship. The uncertainty of where she stands in your life forces her to stay engaged. It makes her show up more, give more, prove more. In a psychological sense, people value what they cannot fully understand. When something is too accessible, too easily explained, it loses emotional value. So when you leave her with questions, when you exit with calm detachment instead of dramatic declarations, when your actions don't always align perfectly with your words, she starts to feel emotionally unstable in the best way. She wants the clarity only you can give, but you never fully hand it to her. She has to earn it. She has to work for your transparency, and until she does, her mind will stay restless, trying to figure you out. That restlessness is the source of her worry, not because you said something threatening, not because you acted disrespectfully, but because your silence, your ambiguity, your emotional control keeps her guessing. And the moment a woman is guessing, she's thinking. The moment she's thinking, she's emotionally tied. And the moment she's emotionally tied without full assurance, she starts worrying about losing you. Creating subtle distance without explanation is a high-level move that psychologically activates a woman's emotional investment in ways she doesn't even realize. This isn't about ghosting or disappearing to play childish games. It's about being deliberate with your time, your presence, and your energy. Most men don't understand how deeply women are attuned to emotional shift. They can feel the difference between a man who is consistent and one who is suddenly slightly distant. And it's in that slight shift, in that deliberate reduction of attention, that she begins to feel a disruption. The predictable rhythm she was used to is gone. She starts asking herself questions. Why hasn't he called yet? Did I say something wrong? Is he losing interest? And it's those very questions that reveal she's becoming emotionally dependent on your presence. This tactic is not about punishment. It's about regaining polarity. In any relationship, when things become too familiar, the emotional charge diminishes. When a man is constantly around, always available, always checking in, it becomes routine. And routine is the enemy of romantic desire. By subtly stepping back, canceling a plan here, taking longer to respond there, not initiating every conversation, you disrupt the pattern. But the key is subtlety. You're not going cold. You're not shutting down. You're simply unavailable without offering an explanation. And that silence is what makes it powerful. If you explain the distance, you destroy the tension. If you justify it, you remove the mystery. But when you let her feel the gap without filling it with words, she starts to chase closure in her own mind. You're not ignoring her out of malice. You're showing her that your world moves with or without her. You're reminding her that she is a part of your life, not the center of it, and that realization can be deeply unsettling for someone who's used to being the emotional priority. This forces her to reassess her position. She starts to reflect on her own behavior. Did I push him away? Have I been too cold? Does he still feel the same way? These thoughts drive her inward, triggering self-awareness and making her emotionally active in the relationship. And the moment a woman becomes emotionally active, she begins investing, and people only worry about what they're invested in. This kind of distance also forces her to confront the contrast between your presence and your absence. When you're present, you bring value, calmness, masculine energy, and a sense of purpose. You listen deeply, speak with clarity, and show affection on your own terms. But when that presence suddenly becomes scarce, she feels the loss more intensely. It's not about time, it's about quality. She remembers how grounded she felt around you, how protected, how heard, and now that energy is missing, and that absence creates space for longing, not resentment, longing. She wants that emotional energy back, but now she's the one reaching for it. The power of this tactic lies in its subtle unpredictability. One week you're fully engaged, the next you're focused elsewhere. You don't need to say why. You don't even need to act differently when you do interact. You're still kind, still present when you choose to be, but you're clearly prioritizing something else. Maybe it's your work, your training, your peace. But she doesn't get a detailed itinerary. That lack of clarity stirs emotional confusion. She begins to wonder who or what has your attention, and in a world where attention equals value, that uncertainty creates urgency. She feels the need to resecure her place in your life, and that urgency often leads to deeper emotional investment on her part. The most powerful part of creating this kind of distance is that it forces her to become the initiator. Instead of you always texting first, she begins to reach out more. Instead of you always planning, she starts asking when she'll see you next. The energy flips, not because you demanded it, but because you created a void. And humans naturally seek to fill voids that affect them emotionally. When done with precision and respect, this tactic positions you as the high-value man who cannot be emotionally manipulated or caged. You are free by default, and she has to earn proximity. The fear of losing that access is what triggers the worry. Not because of what you do directly, but because of what you choose *not* to do. And that kind of restraint is what makes your presence powerful, and your absence unforgettable. Becoming emotionally unpredictable is one of the most potent psychological strategies a man can use to captivate a woman's attention and create a sense of emotional dependency that she doesn't even realize is forming. Human beings crave certainty, especially in romantic dynamics. We want to know where we stand, how someone feels, and what to expect. And yet, the paradox is that emotional certainty often breeds boredom, while unpredictability breeds obsession. When you are consistent in your respect, your values, and your integrity, but inconsistent in your emotional responses, she is forced to remain alert. She cannot pin you down. She cannot fully anticipate what you will do next. And this lack of emotional predictability keeps her nervous system activated. It keeps her guessing, and in that guessing, in that mental replay of your actions, your silence, your tone, your expressions, she starts to lose her emotional balance. That imbalance makes her worry, but understand, this isn't about being toxic or emotionally manipulative. This is about disrupting the pattern she expects from most men. Most guys are predictable to a fault. They respond the same way every time. They say, "I love you," at the same time every night. They compliment her in the same way. They express affection and approval like clockwork. And while that may seem sweet, it eventually becomes expected. And what's expected becomes invisible. When she knows exactly how you'll react to every situation, she becomes emotionally passive. She doesn't need to think about you, analyze you, or adjust her behavior. But when your reactions are occasionally different, when one day you're light and humorous and the next you're quiet and focused, she has to reevaluate the emotional landscape. One day you might be intensely affectionate, giving her your full attention and focus. The next day you're more reserved, introspective, not cold, but clearly mentally occupied with something internal. You're not rude, you're not reactive. You're simply not broadcasting your emotions in a way she can easily read. And that subtle shift forces her to try and figure out what changed. She begins to worry not because you said something wrong, but because you didn't say something at all. She starts scanning your behavior, comparing it to yesterday, trying to detect patterns. Is he pulling away? Did I do something wrong? Is he losing interest? And while her mind is swimming in these thoughts, her emotional bond with you deepens, because confusion in the mind creates attachment in the heart. Another powerful layer of emotional unpredictability is not always reacting the way she wants or expects during moments of conflict. When she pushes your buttons, when she gets moody or distant to test you, if you respond with the same tone every time, you become easy to manipulate. But when she can't predict whether you'll stay calm, walk away, stay silent, or surprise her with affection, she has to stay emotionally flexible. She becomes more careful with her words. She starts weighing her actions. Because now she knows she can't fully predict your next move. And that forces respect. That respect breeds emotional tension. And that tension, when managed properly, transforms into deeper attraction. Emotional unpredictability also comes into play when you are selectively vulnerable. Most men are either completely closed off or overly expressive, but the man who can express a deep truth one moment, then completely retreat into quiet composure the next, creates a polarity that's deeply alluring. She starts to feel that there's more to you than meets the eye, that there are emotional layers she hasn't accessed yet, and that mystery, that emotional duality, keeps her invested. She doesn't know what moment will bring out your softness and what moment will demand your stoicism, and because of that, she stays emotionally engaged, hoping to unlock more of you. Even small inconsistencies, like changing how often you compliment her, switching up your communication patterns, or altering the way you respond to her moods can create this effect, not in a chaotic way, but in a controlled, intentional rhythm. You become like a storm cloud in the distance. She doesn't know if it will rain or if the sun will stay, but she's watching the sky closely. And in that watching, in that alertness, in that subtle emotional anxiety, she begins to prioritize you in her mind. She can't just coast. She can't get lazy. She can't take you for granted. That's the essence of emotional unpredictability. You're not unstable. You're not inconsistent in your character or your values. But you don't hand over the map to your emotional world. You change gears, shift tones, and recalibrate your energy based on your internal compass, not her expectations. That independence, that detachment from needing to be emotionally predictable, puts her in a psychological position where she has to earn your consistency. And when she realizes she doesn't fully control the rhythm of your affection, your attention, your vulnerability, she starts to worry. Not because you did something wrong, but because she knows she might lose access to something she hasn't fully figured out yet. And in that mystery lies your power. The moment she begins to worry about you, not because of what you say, but because of how you carry yourself, you've already shifted the dynamic in your favor. A woman only worries about a man she feels she can lose. And she only feels she can lose him when he moves with independence, emotional control, and a calm unpredictability that she cannot fully decode. You don't achieve this by trying harder or chasing approval. You achieve it by mastering yourself. When you prioritize your purpose, limit your emotional availability, and maintain your masculine edge, she feels that your world doesn't revolve around her. And that subtle tension, that quiet confidence, is what keeps you unforgettable in her mind. You don't beg for her attention, you command it. By becoming the kind of man she realizes she can't easily replace, not through words, but through silence, restraint, and discipline. That's when her mind starts racing, her emotions spiral, and she begins to feel exactly what you wanted her to feel. The fear of losing a man she never fully had control over to begin with.